Good. Well, with that, I would like to say welcome everybody to Animal Heart Press and our book launch for Jerica. This is her amazing book, Rupture and Repair, which we was submitted to us during our chapbook contest like a year ago. Remind me what I like the date, but and we were also like amazed by it, and so hence we had to publish it, and we're so excited to bring it to the world and bring it to life. It's a gorgeous book. It's The writing is so wonderful. I always say like some of the most exciting writing that I like to accept and work with are things that are very unique and creative, which this is, but also so thoroughly high with technical craft. And Jerica has that magical combination, as does Jude, as does so many people that we have published. Kari, Ankh, all these, like it's really got the full package, which is exciting. Right down to the structure of it with its sections, and it's just really brilliant. So welcome everybody. Jerica, congratulations. We're so happy to have you here for your Zoom launch. Yay. So our plan for this afternoon is I have some questions, just chat about your writing process, your book a little bit, some of the poems. And of course, we want to hear you read more than hear me talk. So we'll do that. If people have requests, if people have questions for Jerica as we go, if you have comments on the poems, please put it in the chat, because it's always so wonderful to see and feel that feedback, especially since we're recording. So Jerica can go back later and be like, oh, they liked that. It's just very special. So give her your poetry snaps and comments as we go. And for sure, if you have questions or requests, put it in the chat. So we'll do that for, I don't know, however long feels good. And then we'll take, a 5-minute break or so. And then anyone who wants to read a poem can read a poem. I know I want to, so I'm hoping everyone will.
Me too.
Right? We can, and if there ends up only being 6 of us, we can all read 2. Which is good actually, because sometimes when there's a lot of people, it's like, okay, one quick short poem, we got to move, so it's nice. And of course, I know everyone here knows these things, but this is our safe, venerable feminist safety zone, all love and support, all here for Jerica, all here to celebrate and appreciate you and your work, Jerica. Okay. We can stay muted while she's reading, etc. And but other than that, am I missing any rules, any Zoom rules?
I think you've covered everything.
I think I've covered it. So cool. With that said, I suppose, why doesn't everyone mute except for me and Jerica, and we will chat for a minute. Let me just bring up my little notepad here. There we go. All right. So, I like we said before when we were chatting and before we started recording, we don't have the book in front of us, which I feel terribly about. Jerica should be holding the book up and showing it with you all. I wonder if Amanda, though, wanted to screen share really quick just to give you guys the cover, because at least you can kind of see the feel and the vibe of the book. It's so gorgeous. So maybe Jerica, let's start by talking about this cover, like the art for one. I know it was really special for you to have a friend do this art. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, the art is by Ollie Levy, and I can put their Twitter handle. It's actually Whale Fern, so it's like pretty easy to remember on Twitter and Instagram. They are a friend of a friend who we connected through like nature photography. We've been birding together. And it was one of those like small, the world of small things where I was like, wait, you know that, and I know you. And they're a fabulous artist. And I don't know, must have been pre-pandemic. I thought I would self-pub a mini chapbook because I was just trying to like build some confidence with poetry writing, and you know, I was just kind of like, you know, I was very gung-ho about it.
Yeah.
And I was still really navigating like the small press scene, and I didn't really know where I fit in. It was very much more comfortable to sort of just be like, I'm just going to do something on my own and like throw it out there. So I asked Ollie if they were interested in illustrating a couple of the poems, like, or creating some art based on a poems. And I think I sent them, I can't remember if I sent them like 10 or something. And the idea with that it would be a fun thing to have like poetry in the art next to it. They gave me some just stunning art. This one was my favorite.
Yeah.
And the project got sidelined by, you know, like the world and whatever. And then I felt like several of the poems that they'd illustrated, like I grew enough that I was like, I don't really know that I would put that necessarily in a book now. But I have several of the art pieces like just hung in my office. I have the space geese hung in my office too.
Wow. So they actually sent you the physical.
Yes, yeah, they sent me the physical.
Wow.
A part of the commission was I got both the physical pieces and the digital. And
I love this inside, you know, cover page. I think it's so beautiful. That was our favorite goose, wasn't it? We were like,
yeah.
Amanda's like, let's grab this one. But I love it, and I love the colors and just the whole like feel of the cover. It's all very kind of soft and ethereal and space-like, but the book's also really hard-hitting and really intense in a lot of ways, right? So going from that, like I was wondering a little bit, since I don't really know the history of you writing this, like how did it start? Was this like like a small group of poems that then you nurtured into a larger thing? Did you have a vision that you worked from, or did it just like happen organically? I wonder if you could talk to us a little bit about like the evolution of this poem, because it's quite a large, I mean, it's pretty much a collection in my mind, like it's no joke, you know. So I'm wondering kind of how long it took and what it was like for you.
I don't really remember when you know, I think it was the winter, because I remember that was the January 1st, I think, was the first day of your chapbook submission.
Okay.
And I was ready. I had this ready. I think I sent it like the first day.
That's awesome. Oh, we're honored that you would.
And I had been working on it since the fall, and it went through several different versions. And I think I submitted like an early version as my first, like, this is the first time I'm submitting a chapbook contest to something else. Like maybe it was over the summer or in September. And then I went through and started revising it, and I was in like the zone with writing new poems and just kept finding things that fit in here. And then I got it to a certain point when I knew that I was submitting it to Animal Heart Press, and there were just a couple of things that weren't working, and I ended up writing a couple of poems specifically for this as a collection that helped balance it out. And I did a lot of moving things around, a lot of like the different sections, and a lot of being like, this one doesn't belong here, you know, and then moving it again the next day.
Yep. Absolutely.
Because this was when
big deal book, you know, like, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, it was important to me that it flowed really well. And I think it's, I don't know if that's just the way that I like to read, or it's from like, because I'm a fiction writer too, and I just really love narrative. And so I felt like it needed movement. But it was when my kiddo was home from school forever, for like ever. We had nothing to do. There was nowhere to go. And I would do my work at night after she'd gone to bed. And I would have about an hour of like good brain time before I would just be like, I can't, you're just staring at something.
And that's
so
amazing that you could do it at night after a day home with kiddo, because normally my brain would be fried at that point. Like all I can do is like stare at some Netflix, and be like, deep breaths, deep breaths. That's cool though, that you could have that kind of surge of creativity.
I really needed it. It was a really difficult time for a lot of different reasons. And knowing that I had work that was mine to look forward to at the end of the day got me through a lot of really difficult days.
Really good.
And just insisting on taking everything I was feeling and making a space for it in creative work was just.
I think that's so much of like the COVID experience for moms anyway, and parents and caregivers, but also everybody. It's just like there was no space of my own, it was always just like, oh, mama, and not going anywhere. So no me time, literally, you know what I mean, to shower, let alone be creative. And so I think that's really good that you like carved that out, but also it like produced this book, which is amazing like achievement, really, writing it under like difficult times, so it's really cool.
And I don't know how old your kiddo is, Jerica, but mine are both school age, like high school age kids, and having to try and teach them as well during that time was probably the biggest drain on my mental capacity, because I'm just not equipped knowledge wise or capacity wise to teach things like high school maths,
right?
And I'd get to the end of the day and I'd be like, everyone's alive, I've done well.
Yes.
I had very little.
Absolutely.
I was like, they're alive and I fed them today, yay me. Just so sad, but
yes, it
was like that. And the homeschooling, I pretty much gave up after like a month. I was like, I can't do this, I can't. They would.
My kiddo is she's 6 now. So when the pandemic started, she was in preschool. And it was, guess what? A preschooler cannot do Zoom. And even then it was like once a week, and it was torture. It was awful. She hated it. I hated it.
Right. None
a bunch
of them
of her kindergarten
teacher doesn't.
Yeah, a bunch of her kindergarten year was Zoom, and that was at least regularly every day. Like, it tested our relationship because it was me sort of enforcing this thing that she had no context for. She did not do well in remote schooling.
I know we're going down a bit of a rabbit hole here, but that means that your kiddo really hasn't had a full normal school year.
This is her first one, first grade, her first normal school year.
So really starting out at first grade then. With very little.
It's been weird. Yeah.
Marcel has really little ones too. Marcel, were yours the same kind of age going in?
Mine are 8.5 now and 5.5 now. So the 6-year-old was actually, we hadn't, I'm in the UK, we had no Zoom provision from the school at all. So it was all offline homeschooling. But my 5-year-old was then two and a bit, 3. So just preschool. So it was, so it was tough because they couldn't join in with the older one because they were too far apart in age, really. So, we didn't have to contend with Zoom because there was no Zoom provision from the school, basically, which is kind of a blessing, I guess, In
a way, right. I mean, there's nothing to do all day, or there's something to do, which is challenging. I don't know which is better, but all challenging all around. But I was going to ask you, and I hadn't thought of this question before, Jerica, but like, how is your family? How is your immediate family, your wife and daughter, and also extended family rooted in this book? What kind of things are you coping with in this book with family? Because so much of our pain and drama can come from family. I'm just curious kind of like how that tied into it all for you and how that was for you emotionally.
It's really interesting. I've been through really difficult times and I have done a lot of therapy. In fact, the term rupture and repair is a term that my therapist taught me. It's actually about a like for instance, if I like yell at my daughter and I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe you did that, you know, lose my temper, and whatever. And then I go to her and say, you know what, I'm sorry, this is what happened. Mommy got really frustrated. Or in the opposite section, if she does the same thing, it's something that happens in secure relationships, is the ability for uninterrupted rupture and repair. And a lot of my therapy work has been, a lot of the things that I've been able to do have been helped hugely by having a kid who I can see with compassion in ways that I can't see myself or couldn't previously see myself. So she is astounding in allowing me to frame some of my creative work that involves looking at my past or looking at things that I currently struggle with. It's very frequently, it comes up in like a session where my therapist will be like, well, what would you say if you were, what would you do if this were your kid? What would you say if this were your kid? And because I have such a good relationship with her, and feel confident in my parenting, those answers are really clear in a way that they're not when you're looking back at yourself. So, I mean, I did not expect that to be a benefit of parenthood. But I have not only a really astounding and interesting kid, but she's given me a lot back in just opportunities for my own growth.
Yeah.
As far as as far as extended family, I mean, there's a whole section in here about drama. I have a complicated relationship with my side of the family. My wife's family is astounding. Like, they're just the nice people. We saw them last week. Like, they're just, they're like, I'm like, are you real? They're like just genuinely so kind and giving. It's very funny too. She has a brother, and his wife and I are my sister-in-law and I are getting like increasingly close because we have almost exactly the same experience growing up, and we've married extremely similar people with their own challenges. So often we'll get together and they'll do something in both. Like, she and I would be like, does he do that? It's like, which is wonderful. But like, to have that resource with family is like fascinating to me. I'm an only child. Banana stuff.
You really gained a whole nother family unit, not just spouse.
Thank everything for them. But
so
I have
often it's like you're like, oh, my mother-in-law, you know, I mean, like, for me,
like my mother-in-law is like an incredible person. I am so lucky.
It can be. I'm so happy for you. Like,
it's like I feel extremely lucky. I would say I'm estranged from my parents. Right now, I don't know that they know that. I mean, like, I don't know that they've clued in to that.
Right.
We have, it's basically, I've grown enough that I set some boundaries. And they always say that the people who react most negatively to new boundaries that you set are the people who always benefited from you not having them.
From having zero.
Yeah.
Yes, I am right there with you. And I mean, estranged is a tough word, right? Because it's so heavy and so permanent, but just in your own mind, setting boundaries is so brave and so good. But then they don't even aren't even aware or cognizant of like your needs or growth. I mean, that's how it is with me.
Really, it's challenging, and it's something it's hard for me. Like, there are some things that I just haven't even written about yet because it's hard. Right. You know, I was just thinking now of like what things that I ostensibly have not written about. I'm like, oh yeah, that's glaring that I haven't touched that.
That one
There's this stuff that's like
right now still, right? Like, and we really got to know each other when you came to my trauma workshop
yeah,
last I don't know when, last fall or
the
summer.
winter. Yeah, I went. Yeah,
if no
sometime
ago, we did a trauma workshop, which was incredibly more intense than it was so rewarding and so hard, and I absolutely loved every minute of it. And I loved getting to meet you there and see your work. And I remember, like in our workshop, you were kind of onto this budding thing that was going on, like with the house. And
Yeah.
you were diving into stuff, which was exciting and also probably scary. Have you done anything more with any of that work?
I have, yeah. And I have a workshop that I got into coming up next. God, is it next week? Oh my God, I'm not ready. It's a Zoom workshop. It's so exciting. Like, I mean, it's like a virtual one. It's amazing.
Yes.
But I got accepted to that with poems from that project. And they were like, this seems to have potential. We'd like to work with you on it.
God.
Yes.
Will you email me that workshop? I mean, I don't know if it's full or not, but I'd be interested in coming.
Yeah. It is, it's open mouth literary. So it was like a reading series. So I had to apply
okay.
To it. But like for like the next application period, they're amazing. Just working with them has been.
I need to do more workshops where I go, and not host.
Yeah, exactly. You're not the one doing it.
Fuel in my fires. Like, I feel like I'm like, bleh.
But yeah, the project that Elizabeth was talking about is I envision this like re-exploration, like a sort of journey into a house that I used to live in, and that the circumstances of leaving the house were really fraught. I sort of would like in that way that you reparent or repair things with your child self. I want to frame the poems as in me as an adult going into the house looking for her as a young girl.
I think it's brilliant.
But like also like an amazing amount of like scary work you have to do,
Yeah.
But yeah,
that's gonna be rewarding, beautiful, triggering, scary. It's gonna be the gamut,
Yeah. But yeah, some of the it's funny too, like the one of the poems that I was thinking of reading, Uncle Is Gonna Get You, vividly in my memory takes place at that house.
Okay. That poem sticks in my mind. Just the title alone sticks in your
I have some complicated family and lots of like intergenerational trauma that no one dealt with, and
so it's like
trickled down to me too. But yeah,
it's all kind of on you. If somebody's going to deal with it, it's at your door.
Yeah, lots of issues that my mother and her siblings had with their parents. How fraught that was, because I had a really close relationship with my grandmother. I didn't know like what babysitting was until I was like a teenager, because it was always my grandmother who watched me.
Wow.
But tensions within the family sort of made all of those relationships complicated. And I have another idea of a thing that I want to read. Or I can at least mention it. I was just thinking I have a story to tell about my other grandmother. I mentioned it on Twitter. Some of you guys may already know this, but we can get there. But I just wrote it down on my to-do list.
Okay. Should we come back to it?
Yeah. Anyway, but I feel like I'm doing a lot of talking and not a lot of poetry reading.
This is this is your space and your time. I was gonna say, like, is this a good time to start off with a poem, right?
Yeah. Let me read. Uncle Is Gonna Get You.
Do you have one ready to go?
I have it, yeah.
Cool.
I have the art copy. So let me just turn up my screen brightness so I can see a little bit.
Cool.
All right. uncle is going to get you. Kids should remember birthdays more vividly than they remember the crumble of instant coffee granules, finger sifted into the sugar. More clearly than they remember the timbre of their uncle's voice, the twitch of his mustache, and his furious red cheeks as he yelled at them for not making decaf coffee for their grandparents. Kids should be proud of being given responsibility, finally old enough to boil water in the whistling kettle on the electric stove. They should not be screamed at about avoiding caffeine for heart health because they don't understand. They're 8. They should remember the bitter lick of the spoon, the drip of half and half more sharply than the voices that reverberated through the house long after everyone had gone home. They should put on Gloria Estefan cassette and spin circles in the living room as missile defense loads on the Sega. They should have their gun ready.
Yeah, that last line, I mean, you start it with the uncle title and you end it with they should have their gun ready, and then you have this package in the middle, you know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's funny because I almost did not put that last line, the first draft when I was running it, and I remember writing it, and then I came back and was like, this is it. I don't know if you've ever played Missile Defense on Sega, but it had this, when I played, it was this giant laser gun. And the image was just right there.
Right. And does that poem kind of touch into like the young Jerica, the Jerica now who knows how to take care of a daughter really well, and the Jerica who was not, do you find that one kind of crosses that spectrum, like your new house poems are trying to do?
I mean, it is shockingly clear now that my kid is getting in these ages of memories that I have, to be like, ooh, that was not okay. Right. That is not how that should have happened. And also in like, I know how I would have handled it differently kind of way, that like opens up the idea for repair. You can be like, okay, if I had done that in some fit of whatever, or if that was an existing, what would I do if I noticed it? I mean, this is like the poem is not a single incident, I mean, it is. I mean, that did actually, that coffee is a vivid memory.
Right.
God, when we had instant coffee all the time. I don't know if anybody like drinks coffee now. It's like such a thing with like the granules and the sugar.
It is. It's weird.
Yeah, but it's to look to. I remember. It's funny too because when I wrote this was the first poem. I've written a lot about this particular uncle, and this was the first one I wrote, and I was worried that I was going to get in trouble in that amorphous, terrifying way of like, who's gonna get me in trouble? But it was like, you cannot cross the line, you cannot talk about this, you cannot do this is nothing, you cannot have feelings.
So like you felt unsafe as young Jerica putting it out there. That felt scary, even though you knew
I mean,
no one could actually come get you. You felt that vulnerability.
Yeah, I was not, I did not have, that is a good description. I did not have a safe childhood.
Right.
But yeah, so it definitely writing about old stuff, those flags that got me here, that kept me safe as, got me to adulthood, definitely go up being like, you're not supposed to do this, you know?
I mean, for how painful all of it is, however, you are still able to say, I'm a really good mom. Like well, really, I mean, because as moms, we're often like, I'm trash, I suck, I failed today, I'm damaging my kids daily. You're like, I'm not actually. I'm making good choices because I've seen the other side, So like,
well, yeah, I mean, that's parenthood is hard. And I don't know how people with difficult past or past trauma or whatever go into it without, I mean, that's how intergenerational trauma goes in, is you just go in
Right.
unprepared and you just do what you knew.
Right.
But specifically because of my history, I went back to therapy with very specific goals of
Right.
like, I am not repeating some of these things that happened.
Yeah.
Um,
You could have continued the trauma, or you could have said, that's enough.
yeah, without even realizing it. And that's what happens, you know, is this, you sort of like, people don't necessarily realize that
Mhm.
how they were taught is not really the ideal way to build lasting relationships, or
Yeah.
that things don't have to be the way that they were. But yeah, no, it's
But you're also, you know, you've educated yourself, you go to therapy, like you're putting in the very hard work,
mhm.
and it is very hard work to do all that. Like it doesn't just happen like, okay, I'm gonna be a nice, like it's a transformation from, you know, pain to like, oh honey, I want to give you a hug. I do.
Yeah,
It's,
I
you
mean,
know,
therapy is, it's not, it's hard work, but you're not going to get anywhere unless you do the work.
well, right. It is
And that
hard.
is, I find that really, that's really encouraging for me. Like
Sure.
it's mine. It's like, I can do that. It's like, I can do the hard work. All right.
Mhm. Yeah. We talked a little bit about the uncle title, and I really, when we walked through your manuscript together, and you know, something that I find really important in poetry is titles. I think, you know, if you don't think they're important, you're missing something, to give your poems the strength, and to give your poems, to give the whole structure of your big girl manuscript that punch, that synchronicity. Like, and yours are so, they're often fairly simple, like the blade, like fresh nectarines, the rituals, like, but they have a huge punch. And I was wondering what you think about your titles. Like, do they come to you organically? Do you title them after the fact? Do you have to play around with them and come up with a lot of different ideas? I'm just always kind of curious how people come to their titles, and what's the conscious process of doing it.
I think a lot about titles.
Yeah.
I just remembered too, when you were talking about Uncle is Gonna Get You, I forgot this part of the title. The Gloria Estefan cassette, Rhythm is Gonna Get You. That's
Right?
where the title is from. I
Oh my
forgot
God,
that.
I should, that was
I
like
forgot that.
songs back in the day, girl.
But
Yeah.
yeah, this one came, that title came after I'd written it. Yeah. And was like, because I was like thinking about the callback to, you know, the 80s, and I love that Gloria Estefan cassette.
Oh
I
my
like
God,
played
I
that
love
one.
that song.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so that's a lot of my titles will come. I mean, I almost never start with the title because I don't know what it's going to be, and I draft a lot of fragments. A lot of times I'll write a fragment, let it sit, come back to it, end up combining fragments, mean like you two go together.
Nice.
Prose poems like this, I often write all at once. And I don't know why that is. It's funny. I'm thinking about it now, and I was like, I did. That's actually true. Almost every prose poem I've written as a chunk and then revised it. But
I feel
poems,
the same way, because
yeah,
essentially a
there's
prose poem is one big breath. It's one big,
Mm.
and here it is.
Yeah.
You know, right, Marcel? Marcel is full on prose poetry aficionado
Yeah.
now. Quite
Yeah.
good at them. But yeah,
That's
it's
amazing.
this thing that gathers and gathers in you like this storm, and then releases. And you know, I think it would be very hard to write them in fragments. How would they meld, you know? So that's cool. But yeah, so it sounds like you, yeah, I mean, I think like titles, a poem can be great on its own, but without the title, it's like it's naked. It doesn't have its focus, it doesn't have its path, you know. And I think some people really struggle with titles, you know, but I don't think that you do.
Oh, well, thank you. I feel like a lot of my, I don't know, I would say maybe like 30-40% of my titles I feel like are too simple. But it's, if I have a simple title, it's because I feel like the poem did all the work.
Right. I'm all for simple too. Like I mean, I love like Uncle's Gonna Get, I love like the long, I love, but then you have variations, you know, and then you have something really just boom. So you do a really nice job of that kind of variation of like complex and then contracted, and then, you know, very
Yeah. Well, thank you.
varied.
Yeah. It's
Yeah, no.
it's
I
fun. I
also-
feel like the title's an opportunity.
That's right. It's the title to take your poem from like pretty good to like amazing, you know? And it's a hit or miss kind of thing, really, in my mind. So I feel like they're so important. And I feel like the last line is so important, making that package work together, you know, to kind of hold it all in, bring the reader from that title to the end and keep them with you that whole, you're so good at that, you know. Yeah, so some of your, I think we should read another poem, yeah.
Mhm.
A few
Yeah.
that I had, a few that I had written down, and I mean, I love all of them, but like the Blade to me is so intense. Oh, I love Some Mornings, that one. I love Simple Ritual.
That I should read Some Mornings, because that is the poem that Ollie drew
Okay.
the space geese from.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, that would be
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah, and that one it's quite simple, but it's incredibly hard hitting. So it's a really nice example of that talent of yours.
Some mornings. Some mornings are geese flying over fast and raucous in the cold November sky. I want to climb into the pond and pull the ice up over me like a blanket and watch their uneven V, urge on the stragglers, and then close my eyes as snow flurries dust my cheeks. Some evenings are shallot skin, thin and tough, and a struggle to get to the tender heart, where I wild with teeth meant for roots. I could bite through it all. Some evenings are a pause, where the reflection of the ceiling lights are small suns, halved in an unknowable galaxy, suspended over my dinner table. I could reach up and be a flame.
Again, that ending, that ending hits so strong. I mean, it's a very quiet poem, but it's got a lot packed into it, you know. And you read it so beautifully, like you gave it the breath it needed. You know what I mean? A lovely reading, lovely reading style. Are there any others that you are like right on your list that you'd like to do now?
Well, let me do Amanda wanted me to do Hopeless Scroll,
Okay.
the bread.
Sure.
I really love this poem too, because this actually I remember writing the first line as a fragment. Do not succumb to despair. Here, I'll read it and then I can talk about it. But
Okay. Sounds good. Yeah.
This is 100% a pandemic poem, 100%. And it's in a fabulous anthology put together by Kayla King called Pages Penned in Pandemic.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, which is very, very cool. A bunch of writers just writing our way through it. And I was delighted when I submitted this and that they wanted to include this.
Maybe later when we're doing open mic, you could give us that link.
Oh yeah. Here, I'll pull the book out.
Because I'm sure we'd like to have
Yeah.
access to that.
Yeah.
But later.
All right. For the hopeless scroll under the swipe of your finger, do not succumb to despair. The bakery is hiring, which means tomorrow someone will be making bread. The scent will travel across the canal and down the empty street in the early morning. You will know it in your fragile inhalation. And if we lose this now, we will find it again, and we will make bread until we run out of pans.
Again, I mean, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but from the title to the end, I mean, you can see what they're doing here. It's really, it's like this equation that you hit every time, Jerica, you know?
Thank you. It was a very much a choose hope poem for everybody and for me.
Yeah, I
Was
felt that for sure. Like
just doom scrolling and doom scrolling.
doom scrolling.
And it was during the election. And I remember just being like, telling myself, I remember sitting down at night after just like a fraught day and being like, do not succumb to despair. Like, you know, as just sort of like, just say it to yourself, do not. And where I grew up, there was I don't know if they still make bread, but like the Country Kitchen. It's like
I know
like
about Country Kitchen brand.
yeah. It's like it was like classic.
I'm sure
right. It was like classic white bread.
Right.
But one of the mills was the bread mill, and it was in fact by the canal. And if you would go out like 4 a.m, and I remember going out for, I don't remember, like, it was like going to church at like early, because I would go to like the early mass with my dad, or so all these different memories of being out when you could smell the bread baking and how it filled everything, and how it was like beginning of the day feeling, and that things are continuing feeling, and that like hopeful feeling. And I loved that everybody in the pandemic was making bread, because it was like, yes, this is,
people were doing stuff like making bread.
It was just sort of, it was this idea that it was like, yes, this is like, it's like, this is something that we do because like you don't make bread if you're in despair. You know what I mean? Like you're not, or if you do, you're leading yourself out of it. You've made something.
You're trying to move.
Yeah.
I want to just connect again to, like, you know, you have a lot of very sense related imagery, like with the, you know, the coffee grounds, and then in this one, the smell of bread, and they do bring you back to the young Jerica and that space. But then they also come forward to the now Jerica saying, we have to fight and have hope, right? I mean, it's really, you know, I feel like each of these poems kind of touches on that self evolution. You know, maybe I'm being too overreaching, but like it seems like there's just that formula, that pattern throughout a lot of it.
I mean, yeah, I feel like it's one of the ways that I want to connect with people with poetry, is to sort of be like, you are not alone in seeing the world through these difficulties, and you are not alone in wanting more. And I feel like, I mean, there are some sort of sad poems in here, but I like Amanda just said that as the final poem in the book, I knew I had nailed it. Like that, when I put that poem at the end, I was like, yes, that's perfect.
I'm done.
Yeah. Well, it was because it was this just the way that things travel.
Right. I mean, were you just like elated, like I did it?
Yeah, I read it through and I was like, that one's the perfect end, because it is just that, it is this sort of like, speak it out into the world and make it happen, and like be hopeful, you know. And we can't, I don't know, you can't live through everything that's going on and not find something to keep going that isn't just because I have to, you know what I mean? Like that's it's just like opening up a drain inside yourself, and letting everything go out.
Survival mode, and just like tread water, which is sometimes where I feel like, I mean, that's an amazing segue. I was going to ask you, I had written down, like, what do you see as like the role of this book? What job did you want this book? I always love that. Like, what's the job of this poem? What is the job of this book? What was its purpose? You know, and now that it exists and is out into the world almost, what are your thoughts on that? Like, do you feel like it accomplished? Did you have a goal for it, or now just like, what is it to you now?
Well, I mean, it's funny because I think of it in terms of just like, did it tell a good story? And, you know, or did it take the reader through a story? And that's why the shape of it was so important for me to get those sections balanced right. But that's an interesting question. What is the job of it? I would say that I just hope it would find someone when they needed it. when they needed someone to mirror something back to them, or someone to speak something that maybe they hadn't realized, something that just sort of be like, I didn't know that was available to me. I mean, that's the sort of thing. I remember when I started reading Mary Oliver, there would be these moments where I would be like, I didn't know that joy or that sadness or that experience was available to me. He has this one, I'll have to look at, I'm going to put let's see if I can find a link to it. But it's basically like, I think it was like once someone handed me a box of darkness, and I didn't realize that it too was a gift.
Wow.
Yeah, and something like that. And it's like that kind of, but that kind of, if you read someone who is telling you about something they've experienced, it just gives you like a touchstone, or opens up this kind of door to, I didn't know that, you know, that it was like, okay, to give permission or to give insight, or I don't know, it's just that sort of invitation to be like, yeah, you know, like I do with my sister-in-law, that I'm like, oh my God, yeah, it's that. What do you mean? Why is nobody crying at Christmas at our spouse's house?
Right, like there's another option here.
Yeah, like what is that? What do you mean? Why? Like every year I'd be like, is this fake? Why is no one sobbing?
Right. Like we have a choice. To me,
I'm trying to move so like the sun is not like angelic lighting me here from like how it's coming in my office.
Yeah, no, you've got the late afternoon. I feel like, you know, it for me, as someone who gets very much stuck in the blackness, especially of motherhood, you know, to me, it like reminds me, like, Ellie, you don't have to stay here. This does not have to be your destiny, but you are going to have to make that choice, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's an incredible, like, hand held out, like, to me and any other mom or human being, creature that's like stuck. You know, this was my shitty past. Those were my parents. This was my trauma. You know, you're breaking free in so many ways that are so hard to do, but you're not like accepting that as fate. And for me, that is incredibly inspiring and helps me think to myself, like, you know, I could move away from treading water and thrive better, you know.
There's always movement. There's always space for
change if you can find the courage and do the work again. But yeah. Now I'm feeling a little emotional. No,
well,
but
it's like that's the job of the book. The book did its job. It's just like
did do its job.
Get into some emotion, tap into you, and you know, whatever. I mean, that's the thing that I love about poetry so much, is that when I am feeling something, I know what poem to go to reflect that back, or when I need something, I know what it is that I need to read.
That's cool.
And and it's just, I mean, that's just so, it's like rereading, or like when you're just like, I'm in this terrible creative rut, I've got to reread like my favorite book or something.
I was gonna ask, like, who do you go to other than Mary Oliver or
for poetry? You know what, one of the things that I do,
like hope or something, you know.
One of the things that I do that I highly recommend is that on Twitter I follow a bunch of like amazing poets and writers and stuff, and a lot of people will post screenshots of poems or something like that, that'll just be like, this is the poem I'm reading, not of theirs, but of like they're sharing with people, like I was reading this one today, you know, like someone just shared today the Mary Oliver one about if you find joy is not meant to be a crumb, which always like resonates with me. Like, oh, it's, if you don't know, it's a good one, just like it's from one of her prose books. Right. But I'll bookmark them in Twitter. There's a little like bookmark function, and I'll go through and read them all when I'm in a reading area, and it'll be these like prime recommended poems from all of these other people, right, who are, or like the one like Anna Lemon about the raincoat. I don't know if you know what that one. I'm always like, it's a parenthood one. I'm gonna put all these links in here. But
I am curious though, like I think that's amazing, and that is like the best use of Twitter I've ever heard in my life.
it's like I get this own personalized, and because a lot of the time I'm scrolling, I'm in the middle of something like with my kiddo, or I'm in the pickup line, and it's not a time for me to like read and sit with the poem. But I'll see someone who I like, or there's just it's come up twice now, and I'm like, I'm just gonna bookmark that and read it later. And then I have all these other poets or other readers who are just like, I needed this poem today. And it's then like you get
MFA reading for free. I mean, you get the most amazing MFA list. You can go just study it. I love that. I should do that.
Yeah, I don't know that there's I really like reading anthologies lately. Because or like reading a lot of like the just picking like a lit journal's newest issue and just reading through it.
Nice.
And then going through and following all those people.
Right.
Because there's so many people who are writing. I don't write well in form, like really specific, like structured form. I cannot get my point across the same way that I can with like free verse form and using those styles. But there's so many people who are doing amazing things with form. Yeah, and that just like
it's not like a dirty word anymore.
And well, like, exactly. It's not like you must conform to this thing. You like, see people like blowing up these like
pull it off, right?
Yeah,
and I love that because I think like if you can write a hell of a sonnet, do it. You know, you can have it followed by a free verse in your book, and then a prose poem, and then a this, and then a list, and then this. Like that's exciting. You know.
Yeah. I'm looking it up right now because I want to find it. I'm gonna have to just post like a follow-up list of like all the poems that I thought of during this reading.
I mean, we are all here. Like it'd be nice to have this in the video, but either way, like I mean,
I'll see. Like while we're doing some, like we do a pause or something.
Yeah, once other people are reading, you can do your little research and put it in the chat.
Yeah, but I'm gonna find it, but there's in thinking of form, someone who I was in a reading with from Stone of Madness, their poem was triptych on trichotillomania, which is like which is like hair pulling. And I was just like, look at you, like amazing form, and just that kind of like, I love just my mind blown by people doing things like that.
Amanda recently busted out a golden shovel.
Yes, I did not know what that was.
Amanda,
I remember someone looking at it, and I had to like, go and just in the like what is this
that I've never heard of that people are I mean, I didn't learn about a golden shovel in my MFA. No.
I don't think golden shovel was invented when I did my MFA. So.
I learned about it from Beth, from
Beth,
reading the ones that she wrote. Yeah.
And what is it briefly, love? What is it again?
The end of every line, the last word in every line is part of a quote from somewhere else. So if you read down the page and you read the last word of every line, you get a quote from another poem or a play or a book. Or
was it your recent one in the Australian journal, A Golden Shovel?
No,
that
one was a prose poem.
It was prose. Well, maybe you'll read us A Golden Shovel when we read.
Yeah.
I was wondering, does anybody have, Jude and Marcel, I realize you don't have her book in front of you. Amanda, did you have another request? Or I can request one, or Jerica can just say, I want to read this one.
I've had my request. I'm good.
Did yours?
Jerica read the one I wanted.
I've got a request.
Oh,
good.
Yes.
Because I did have a
book.
I had a sneaky peek, didn't I?
Oh my God. And written a blurb. Jude, you probably knew that too. And Marcel, thank you. I want to talk about the blurbs just really briefly and lovingly. Marcel wrote an amazing blurb. Kari, bless her angel heart, wrote an amazing blurb a few weeks before she passed away. I feel like it's like held in time. She's here with us in time. I mean, good Lord, like I feel so blessed that we got to have that gift from her. you know, I sent her the request to do it and she had it back to me in like 48 hours. That was Kari, you know. And then we have a really amazing one from Karen Gonzalez as well. So the three of those were so good. But yeah, Marcel, go ahead. Thank you.
Sorry. I was going to ask for simple ritual, if that's all right.
I love that one. That's on my list too.
Thank you. And that I can tell a story about that one. So thank you.
So good.
I'm going to mute because I'm coughing.
Yeah, let's pull that one up. Hang on.
And again, you know, simple ritual, simple title, but so right what it needed to be, you know, just spot on.
That was one of the ones that I was like, what do I title this? And then when I was thinking of it, it's just that idea that any of this was simple was, you know, it's like, it's very simple. It's like none of this is simple, but it was a fun,
Yeah, it's a play.
Sarcastic, but like not
sarcastic
title.
Juxtaposition, right? Brilliant.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Let me see if I can find, where is it? Sorry. I'm like scrolling through like the arc. So, oh, there it is. Okay.
All right, take your time.
All right. Simple ritual. There is a simple ritual to contact the dead. You will need the return address from a card they mailed you. Though in a pinch, your name in their handwriting is enough. You will need something ugly they gave you that you nevertheless kept. Intergenerational trauma is best, but a curse you still remember in their voice will suffice. You will need a large orange and an old birdhouse and a stained coffee cup. You won't even need to use any blood if you have a pair of acrylic frame glasses. Put them on. You will need to hold the question clearly in your mind. They will not show up for a chat. If you want to save yourself the time, the answer is usually yes. Were they sorry? Did they mean it? Are they at rest? Did they love you? Yes, you look so much like her wearing those glasses.
Wow.
Thank you.
That
I mean, that's really some brilliant writing, and your slant rhyming gets me very excited in this poem.
Thank you.
It's clever and subtle, and I love that. That poem has everything to me in it. It's just a complete package of pain, of loss.
Yeah, and like to me, it's loss, and also coming out on the other end of like, you like in grieving something that you've lost, you find that it's yours.
Is that what that last line means to you? Is kind of brings it back into like,
well, I mean, I liked the twist of the line of the answer of asking all those questions and saying yes, but it's not the yes of, it's the yes of those questions, of course, but it's also the yes of like, it's about my grandmother, who I was very close with, who wore these, like, they're hip now. They're like those giant acrylic frame glasses.
okay.
That were like light pink. And it was like, there were like two sizes of glasses. And then she got them once and then never got new glasses. It was just those.
Wow. Yeah.
And this idea that, you know, I mean, when I write fiction, I write a lot of fantasy stuff. And I like the idea of, you know, like, you know, the weirder like rituals to contact the dead and that sort of thing. But
right.
The idea that you are already doing it. You know what I mean? Like, it is already what you need is already accessible to you. You already have the answers, or you have what it is that you need. And I find that really reassuring when looking at loss, or things that like I did not believe I was allowed to grieve, or things that I was not capable of grieving, or loss that was so overwhelming that I didn't want to look at it. to sort of come. And again, it's that idea that it's like, if it's in within my power, it's so much, I can do it. Like I can do, you know, oh, it's just me doing it. Yeah, I can do that.
If we went to like the job of this poem, is it kind of like permission to grieve? It's like permission to access.
Yep. Yes. And also permission to know the answer to all of the questions that you want to ask. You know, like,
or at least look for them, or at least
that like that permission to have the connection, that you wanted. Like if you've lost someone and there's something unresolved in it, to be able to say, yes, this connection I have matters. This connection is enough.
And I have the permission and the safety to go into it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I really love that. You know.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I have. There's a bunch of grandmother poems, because I have two grandmothers who I was both really close to in really different ways. And I won't read it because it's long. But Paquerette is about one of my other grandmothers whose middle name. It was always first name P and then her last name on like all the cards that she would send me.
Her name was that, right?
Yeah, like, well, her middle name was Paquerette.
Right.
So we're very like, my family's very French Canadian. Right. And Paquerette is French for Daisy.
I remember this. Okay, it's all coming back to me because I remember being like, Jerica, I feel really stupid, but I don't know what Paquerette means.
Yeah, Paquerette is, it's an extremely whimsical, middle name for somebody who I always knew as like the matriarch of the family.
Yeah.
And the story that I have, I won't read all of Paquerette because it's really long. But this grandmother, for reasons that are complicated, I do not have a lot of, she was a cook, and she was a very influential cook for me, and I do not have access to a lot of her recipes for complicated reasons. And I was feeling really nostalgic. And one of the fiction books I'm writing is going to focus on some, like the hook of it is like someone's doing some family cooking through an old family like collection of recipes. And I was like, you know what? Imagine if I could go, like, I wish I had access to like those old family recipes. And I was like, oh my God, I remember. I mean, like, Elizabeth, you're in New England, so, you know, like there used to be like, I think maybe they still do it now, but there were always, when I was a kid, these church cookbooks. And it would be, the collection like the of everybody's
bizarre.
And they would get all these recipes in, and like where I grew up had a ton of churches. There were a ton of French Canadian churches. I don't know why there were so many in like a small area.
They should have consolidated.
But there were so many of these. Exactly so many of those like church cookbooks floating around. And so I went on eBay with the excuse that it was like writing research, and found some old of those church cookbooks that happened to be from my hometown. I was like, oh, that's so cool, because it was like a main like diaspora area of like the French Canadian Catholics. And so I ordered two of them, one from like 1973 and one from like the 90s or something. And it was like, oh, this is going to be so cool. Surely there's going to be a bunch of old French lady recipes in here that I want. Like, this will be perfect, because it's like, I know that church, you know, it was great. So I got them, and I was looking through, and I was going to take a picture to send to a friend of some of the weird French Canadian food that we've been talking about. And I was like, because there's just like potato candy. I don't know if you've had Needham's. It's bizarre. It's like 3 ingredients. It's potatoes, coconut. No, it's 4 ingredients. Sorry, potatoes, coconut, confectioner's sugar, and then you dip it in chocolate. Amazing. It's delicious.
It sounds amazing, but no,
it's like it's very much like poor people food. It's like poor people candy, like candy out of potatoes, you know, like, or like depression candy
out
or
of
that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I was looking forward to see if the cookbook had a recipe for Needham's, and they did not, but they had a recipe for chocolate delight, which is another, I guess other people call it icebox cake. which I had never heard of, but every like in like where I grew up, it was called Chocolate Delight, and it's, you know, the kind of like Cool Whip and pudding and like a nut crust and, you know, cream cheese with sugar, very, you know, classic dessert. I think my wife's family has something similar that they call icebox cake. But I went looking and I found this cookbook had 2 chocolate delight recipes, and one of them was with graham crackers. And I was like, oh, the way my grandmother made it was always with the nut crust. I'm gonna look at the second recipe and take a picture of it for my friend that has the nut crust. It was my grandmother's recipe. Her name right there underneath it. There are 6 recipes in that book from her that she contributed to this like church cookbook.
You hit the mother load of her. I mean,
Just,
you got 6.
Yeah, just this like, it's like she was just like, here. You need some recipes? Here you go.
You need to write like a short story just about that.
Right? Yeah, could not believe it. Yeah,
eBay and getting it, you know.
Was just dumbfounded that it was her name right there. And I was like,
she was showing them to you. She's like, here, girl. Here's
she was like, oh yeah, you want, you know. And it was funny too, because they're little, you know, because it's like a church contributed cookbook, there's little commentary and stuff. And she said about this one recipe, she described exactly how I remembered. It was this bran muffin recipe, but she would scoop it from a bowl that she had in the refrigerator overnight. And I've never found a bran muffin recipe that does this, but there was her recipe right there. And she says, like, excellent recipe. I would make the batter the night before and then just scoop it straight from the fridge. And it would make these like towering, yeah, it was amazing. And I can't make it right now because everyone in the house is allergic to gluten. And like, I know, right? And brain, yeah, but I'm gonna find some way to substitute and make that. Yeah, I want to make all these crazy recipes.
Flour somehow, but that's really special and beautiful.
Yeah, I could not believe it. And it's like, it was one of those like, well, I should have known because she was, you know, very involved in the church, but it wasn't like it was just a random year, a random book.
Right. It wasn't guaranteed that you would get any of hers, but
yeah, I mean, I never, to think of her as her having her own inner life rather than just my grandmother, who was the sort of person who contributed recipes to her church cookbook, you know. And yeah, so this is sort of like that gift of perspective. And
you get to hold that original book in your hands. You know?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Not just like a PDF you got, you know.
No, it's just this old. It has like the classic like plastic spiral bound thing. Like, it's great.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. My grandmother gave me a box of her recipes before she died. She died about a year ago, but like early on, she was like, here, you know,
she was like
avocado green, you know, tin, and the recipes are like tuna wiggle. This is Indiana, you know, working class. Tuna wiggle, tuna casserole, Jello casserole, like Jello wiggle. Everything was like everything had like Velveeta cheese, olives, and noodles. Like, and bread. I'm like, good God, like it's not haute cuisine, but it's very much Indiana, South Bend, Indiana. So it's hilarious.
I found another link that I want to share. I don't really get TikTok. I'm too old for TikTok, but there is this one person on TikTok that I'll watch his videos, and he basically cooks from crazy old cookbooks like that. Like, he cooks from you know, like Depression era cookbooks and stuff.
She grew up in the everything was about like saving and not wasting, and like,
and it's surprising how many of the recipes that he's like, I can't believe this tastes good. You know, like, I am so upset that this is so good. You know, like, they knew what they were doing. Those cooks knew what they were doing.
They knew how to get by. I was thinking, Jerica, is there one that you would like to kind of wrap this part of our time up with, like, or shall I?
Let me see. I mean, I would have read like Hopeless Scroll at the end. Let me see if there's something that
and knowing that we can come back. So we could read one now, have a break, come back, do a little open mic, and then have you close also with a poem.
Yeah. Why don't we I will see if I can find one to close with. That I feel like reading, and if not, then that's fine.
A couple of my ones was the 10:11, and I can't get my email back up because I'm a dummy. There it is. Simple ritual. We did that, right?
Yeah.
And then the 10 colon 11 and superstitions. I also really loved that.
Yeah, I can read. Let me look at 10, 11 and see if I can remember it. I don't want to end on one that's too sad.
Well,
but I feel like that one. I feel like that one's melancholy.
Yeah.
I feel like that one's melancholy. Let me see if I can find it. I'm just like scrolling through this. This is how I felt when I was making this draft. It's just like scroll.
If you scroll and you find one you like better than that,
yeah,
grab it.
Oh no, that's a good one. Okay, I can. You want to read that now, or you want to read it at the end?
Let's read it now, and then we'll take our break.
All right. 10, 11. It's like the time. And it's one of those times that I don't know if this happens to you. This happens to me all the time, where I will see a time and then I will always see that time. Like I will look up at a clock and it will always be like 10, 11, day after day after day.
Yep.
Or like you see a number that just keeps repeating, and it's like 10, 11 was one of those numbers that just, it was somehow always, I think maybe that was the time that I would finish my writing for the night. It would be like 10, 11 at night. So that's where that one was. It's just one of those like numbers that follow you. 10, 11. The dark window separates the white of an egg dripping from the shell of the moon. The water carves itself a narrow channel within the cone of the icicle. Will you hold me like an old guitar you're trying to remember how to play? Or the organ, both hands on the keys of my ribs, so that I might cry with a song of release?
Yeah, I mean, this one was on my list purely for the language. I mean, I picture like trying to sift the white from the yolk in the two halves, but it's the moon. You know, I mean, that just like, the language is unbelievable.
Thank you. I have chickens. I think I've said before, and I think a lot about eggs in terms of like, you know, things that are created. And I guess people don't always know this about eggs too, but they're not all chicks. You can't just leave a bunch of eggs around and it'll turn into chicks. You can't even just leave a bunch of eggs around and have a chicken try to sit in them and it will turn into chicks. They're just not. It's not how they work.
There's a lot of variables and a lot of necessary conditions, and even still they might die. You know?
Yeah, right. Yeah, and there's only like certain time periods of the seasons that they'll like be able to like grow a chick from it. And, but anyway, I have a lot of eggs just around and in my life, and so I think egg imagery comes up a lot. That and ponds. There's a lot of ponds in here. We have a vernal pool in the backyard, and I write about ponds all the time. But nature.
We live in a similar geographic. I mean, we're not that close, but we are kind of, considering like how spaced out we all are. Like you and I are pretty close to each other, which is awesome. You know,
I mean, writing about nature and like the living in like the woods like I do, it is so freeing when so much of like whatever is happening inside my head, because there's nothing I can do about all of these things. Like the seasons happen, flowers just bloom or they don't bloom, or like a frost will happen overnight and like everything is fine, or like things aren't fine, and there's just, it's all of this whole movement is happening that I get to watch but that I don't have to do anything about. And that does that
feel good? Does that feel,
it feels wonderful? And it feels wonderful as a source for reflection, because there's ways that I can sort of look like the lilacs. I really love lilacs, and I have a lot of like lilac memories. And just because it's again like that they have such a strong scent, and they just like that scent memory. But yeah, I have a lilac bush outside. They're just done. They're going to seed now. And it's just to just look at it and be like, this is just happening. I get to just watch this, you know. I didn't have to do anything. And
you weren't in charge of it.
yeah, I wasn't in charge. I didn't fail at it, or
Mhm.
you know what I mean? Like it's just
Mhm.
sort of like
Right.
sometimes I remember to turn the back at the right time, and they bloom in different ways, and then it's not.
I think it's an amazing gift to not feel responsible about something, right? Like,
Yeah, and that it's not about me. Like if something goes wrong, it's not about me. You know, like we had some frost snaps, and we lost like a lot of the tadpoles, and I can sort of look at it and be sad about it, and then just be like, has nothing, like I can witness this, but this has literally nothing to do with me, you know. And it's to experience an emotion that you're not responsible for, or that you're not having like complicated guilt or you know, like panic about or whatever. It's just so like, it's such a gift to sort of just be like, oh, this is just a thing that I got to watch.
right.
You know, how reassuring that everything is going on out there, and I can just go out when I want to, go for a stroll around the pond.
I think that's a very wise and also healing perspective, you know, so that you don't just take on all of the guilt and weight of the world all the time.
Yeah.
You know where
we want to control things. We want to feel like we can in some way.
Right.
Like it makes sense that you want to be like, oh my God, if I was just good enough, then, you know, if, you know, I somehow could have saved the tadpole. If it's just that, like, you want to feel like you can do that. And then hard truth is that you can't.
I get upset about tadpole deaths.
I'm just, like, seriously, you know?
I can't stand it. I have a poem I wrote about like young children at the pond killing tadpoles, and I go off. Like I just like when we come back, I have an egg poem I want to read to you, and maybe the tadpole poem, but it's quite angry.
And I'll assemble all of my links of random thoughts that I've had.
You an egg or chicken one. Well, I just want to say right now, Jerica, thank you for sharing all of this amazing poetry, all of your insights, and yourself with us today. It's amazing.
Thank you so much.
It's been really fun and really special to be here.